I'm a very itchy person. I'm a joiner apparently. Y'all are cracking me up. Don't open the door. If I'm sitting, I'm knitting. So I currently have a big old hunk of meat. Is that genius or what? Yeah, and nobody's gonna see it. It's a fancy sweatshirt, it's bougie. It smells so good, I can't concentrate on anything else. I would say you need to jump on that wagon right now. It's very casual, but I ain't done yet. Hello y'all, and welcome to a Young Folk Knits Knitting Chat. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Young Folk Knits podcast. My name is Casey, and I'm the maker here at Young Folk Knits. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back, and if you're new, then you are very welcome. This is a channel where I mainly talk about knitting. I also sprinkle in some other crafts that I enjoy doing, and I also share about our life here on a small farm in Arkansas, where we live in the foothills of the Ozarks. My husband and I are beekeepers, and we also enjoy raising some other animals and tending to our gardens. For today's episode, I have another knit and chat in store for y'all. You're always so very helpful whenever I put a question box up on Instagram and you give me lots of topics, questions, thoughts, ideas. I really appreciate hearing about what y'all are interested in. In fact, I got so many great comments that I won't be able to talk about all of them today, but there were actually a few topics, ideas, questions that I would like to turn into a whole video in themselves. So stay tuned for that. Today I grabbed a couple different projects that I thought I could work on while we chat. Now I just need to pick which one. This is some Plenty yarn that Pearl Soho gifted me in one of their new bases. And I highly recommend signing up for their newsletter because there might be an upcoming knit along using this yarn or a similar weight to make their bandana KAL. And if you'd like to use this yarn, there might be a discount on it. So make sure you sign up for their newsletter. I am using their Plenty yarn in the color Pearl Gray, which is a new color. And it has this beautiful depth of color in it. It's just absolutely stunning. So I've cast on for that this morning, and I was looking at the pattern, and I've made this bandana KAL before, but it's been a few years. In fact, I had to look for my US 10 needles or 6mm needles because I don't think I've used these for about 5 years, which was when I made my first bandana KAL. Finally found those needles, cast on, and let me see what all I need to do. Okay, it looks like I'm gonna need to count stitches, which I can't do while I'm chatting. So I am going to work on a Pearl Soho classic ribbed hat. I am using this Magpie Fiber Swanky DK in the color Strange Brew. And I've cast it on, I've only got a few rows, but it is just ribbed all the way through. Super easy, knit, purl, knit, purl. So I think I will knit on this while we chat.
Gonna let the sun shine in the day. I'm gonna let the past be filled with smoke, and I will try to fix what has been broken, and take this weight off my shoulders, cause I know yesterday ain't coming back. I'm gonna let the past stay in the cold. I will listen to the ocean, let its unsaid words be spoken, and I'll let my mind be carried by the waves. Oh, I will open up
Okay, first up, let's do a knitting related question. Okay, first question I got was, I noticed that you weave your ends in after you block. Does it make a difference before, after? So I think I should clarify, I don't usually weave my ends in after. What I try to do is weave my ends in and then block and then cut my tails. The reason for that is because once you weave your tails in or your ends in, then they're in position, but when you block it, it's going to move. The stitches are going to readjust, they're going to change shape, you're going to be stretching, and whenever you do that and open the stitches up, where you have woven your ends in, that yarn is going to move a little bit. Also, if it's a non-superwash, it will felt a little bit, felt in place. So all of that is a good thing, but if you have cut your tails already, then it might, when it moves and opens up, it might kind of pop out of a stitch and stick out. So I like to weave my ends in and then soak it and then pin it in place and block it to the size and shape that it is going to be. And then once it is dry, I will cut my ends off. Sometimes I will have just barely woven my ends in and I need to weave them in further, so that may be what you've seen on some of my videos. But best case scenario, I prefer, and I think that the best outcome is if you weave in, soak, block, and then trim. That is my suggestion, and that is what I try to do. So I got another question about how do you weave in your ends. And I do want to talk about this that I recently picked up from Nikki on the Knitting with Cat Hair podcast. And she does a lot of color work and she's working on a color work sweater right now. And she showed her ends and how she is weaving in the ends as she goes with the color work. So the way she does it is that when she joins her new yarn, a few stitches before she's ready to start knitting with it, she starts catching it like it's a float. Is that genius or what? And she catches it on every other stitch. And then she switches over and starts knitting with the new yarn. But then she starts catching her old yarn every other stitch as a float for like 5 or 7 stitches. I was like, wow, that is so incredibly genius. So I started doing that, which I think is so perfect for color work socks, a color work hat, color work sweater, anything. I think that's awesome because then all you have to do is cut your end off. I think it's perfect. With another thing that I do with color work socks is that sometimes I won't weave my ends in at all. If I've got stripes where it's just like 50 different colors, then where I've got the 2 tails from the old color that's stopping and the new color that's joining, then I will tie like a triple knot and then I will trim it so that it's about 1 inch long and I will fray the ends. And that way it's probably not gonna go anywhere. And that is so helpful for whenever you have, you know, tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of colors. And I do that a lot. Sometimes I do it on sleeves if I've got striped sleeves. Yeah, and nobody's gonna see it. On the inside of the body of a sweater, people might see that, so I do usually try to actually sew those ends to weave them in and make it look as neat as possible. But as long as the outside of a sweater looks good, I'm not super concerned about the inside being perfect. That doesn't bother me at all. I'm not super anal about my ends as far as that goes. As long as they're secure and the outside of the sweater, for instance, or hat, as long as that looks good, I don't care about the inside that much. So if you need permission, here's your permission. You don't have to make your ends look perfect where nobody's gonna see it. Okay, I got this a few different times, worded a little bit differently. Trying new techniques, how to progress in your knitting skills. So I thought this was a good question because I think that you can be a knitter for a very long time, or crochet or sewing, but let's focus on knitting. I think you could knit for a very long time And I think that you could just knit and purl and do simple stockinette projects, maybe just make a hat. And you could be very, very good at that and have wonderful, beautiful stitches and be amazing at that. But I think that if you want to continually progress as a knitter, then you need to continue to try new things that are hard and that you don't know how to do. So for a long time, I just knit hats or a scarf or a blanket, and it was like garter stitch, stockinette stitch, nothing wrong with that, and I loved it. But then I jumped into a sweater pattern. Then you're doing some new things like increases, decreases, shaping, picking up stitches, which isn't hard, but it's something new. And then once you do it, you have added those skills to your repertoire. The next pattern you do might be a shawl that has brioche in it. So now you are increasing, decreasing, maybe doing some shaping, you're working flat, and you're gonna add in some brioche. You're using those things that you've done before, but you're adding in something new that you've never done. You have to push yourself to try something new, and I think every time you do that, it might be a little bit scary, and it might be hard, and you might not do it perfect. I know I don't, but I think that's what makes it exciting. And I think that's why sometimes I get bored with just plain stockinette, because I want there to be a challenge. I want there to be something new. I want to learn something. And I think that is how you continually progress as a knitter. And that is how I learned so many different things. Like when I first started knitting, even tinking back, so I made a mistake, I would rip the entire thing out and start over if, say, I made a mistake one row back. Whereas very quickly, knitting new things and trying new things, you start to understand how those stitches work, how different stitches are aligned on your needles. You just understand your fabric so much better, everything new that you try. And I think that makes even the simple things easier and better, if that makes sense at all. So my tip would be maybe have one project that you can relax with. Have something that you are comfortable with, you don't have to think about. And that can be your mindless knitting project. But also try to always have a project on the go that is going to challenge you a little bit. And you're just going to see your knitting skills continue to increase. You're going to learn more and more. And I think that really contributes to making everything else you knit that much better. So I get a lot of questions often like this one. How do you make time for knitting with a busy schedule? How on earth do you knit so much? Don't you also homeschool your children? Y'all are cracking me up. So I do knit a lot, but I do have some special circumstances. I am at home and I spend a lot of time inside setting with my kids while they homeschool. And during that time, I'm usually knitting while I'm talking to them, while I'm helping them with their homeschool. I like to devote an hour or two in the evening after I've put my kids to bed where I just kind of relax, and I do that by knitting and either listening to an audiobook or chatting with my husband or watching a movie while I knit. If I'm in the car and I'm not the person driving, then I'm always knitting. I feel like it's probably extremely annoying to everyone around me. But yeah, I'm just always knitting. Anytime that I can multitask and knit while I do something else, then I do it. I've always got my knitting right there at hand so that if there's a moment of free time, then I'll knit. If I'm waiting at a doctor's office, I knit. When we go visit family, I take my knitting with me and I sit on the couch and visit and I knit while I do it. Knitting is just so ingrained in my daily life that I'm doing it anytime I can. And that definitely helps me move through things. As long as I'm using the right needles and the right yarn for me, and I take breaks and I switch up different projects that use different stitches, then I find that my hands do okay. Once they start hurting, I try to take a break and give them a rest and do something different. But I have found that my fingers are now extremely strong. They're bigger than they were before. And I think it's because I got some muscles in my fingers. I even noticed that when I play the piano, usually I have to warm up for a while before I'm ready to actually play. And I find that knitting is almost like my warm up. I'm ready to go. My fingers are limber and ready. And it's definitely turned into an addiction. I don't feel right if I don't have it in my hands. If I'm sitting, I'm knitting. If I'm sitting, I'm knitting. What is your favorite type of thing to make? Shawls, sweaters, etc. So I have talked a little bit about this before, but honestly, my favorite thing to make is a shawl. I love shawls. Shawls are so much fun. I don't know what it is. I just enjoy it so much. Usually they've got either different colors or different stitch patterns in it. There's lots of diversity built into the project. I just love it. And I love the fact that no matter what, I can always wear a shawl, even if my size changes. Shawls are also pretty good at being a nice multi-season accessory. So I just love shawls. I love them so much. And after that, I would say it's sweaters. I really love knitting a pullover sweater. I think that's just, you know, pretty fun, classic. In fact, I have so many sweaters planned for this fall and winter. I just don't even know how I possibly think I'm gonna knit all of them. If you've never knit a shawl before, I would say you need to jump on that wagon right now. And I'm very excited that this year's Stephen West Mystery Knit Along is very soon to start. So on the last episode, I did say that I thought that last year's KAL, the ending of the shawl I didn't like, and it turned me off from that shawl in particular. But I do have to say, I did love the rest of the shawl, and I do want to clarify that that was absolutely no shade intended to Stephen West Designs. I love his designs. I think he's a genius when it comes to designing shawls, and so many people said this, and I 100% agree, that the mystery knit along isn't always about making something beautiful and stunning that you're going to wear on a daily basis. It's more for fun. You don't know what it's going to turn out to be like, and he has weekly videos that are like little mini master classes that teach you how to do all these different and new techniques. So that is so fun and very informative, and you learn so much. So I think that that is the reason to do the KAL, and you're doing it with everybody else, so it's just super fun. So yeah, that would be a great opportunity to make a shawl coming up with lots of support. So yeah, I say jump on that shawl bandwagon. Okay, the last question I'm going to talk about today, and there are some great questions in here, so I'm going to revisit this list of questions for sure. I really appreciate all of your responses. I loved your Bees Are Friends knit along. Will you be hosting another knit along anytime soon? Okay, so I am actually oh my goodness, girl. I have joined so many different knit alongs right now. It is ridiculous. I have joined so many different knit alongs. I don't even know what all knit alongs I'm in at the moment. I can't even name them all. I would love to finish my Alpenglow sweater within the time limit, which is looking highly unlikely, but that's okay because I'm not going to Rhinebeck anyway. I'm doing the bandana cowl knit along with Purl Soho, but that is a super quick knit. Like, you could definitely knit it in a day or two. So Jess, who owns the yarn shop La Mercerie, she is hosting a Knit Life Aquatic knit along where everybody's making red hats. So I'm making another red classic ribbed hat by Purl Soho out of Little Linehead Knits Let's Picnic color in her DK yarn. That's another knit along. I am participating in Martina from We Grow Wild's Shall We Shawl knit along. I'm really wanting to join in the knit along, which is hosted by one of my friends, Anniina, and I'm wanting to make her Oh Honey socks, which I have shown previously on the podcast, and that is part of her Fall of Socks knit along, but I ain't done yet. So Nikki from the Knitting with Cat Hair podcast last year hosted a knit along where you made a Marie Wallen pattern. It didn't matter what, of any kind. And so she's doing another year of Marie Wallen knit along. And I have got all the yarn to make a pullover colorwork sweater by Marie Wallen. So I want to join that as well. You know what? I know there's more, but I can't think of it in this moment. So there's one more that I haven't got to talk about yet on the channel, and I wanted to talk about today. Hang on, let me get something. So a few different podcasters have all decided to knit something with unspun yarn. I have never knit anything with unspun yarn before, so I'm very excited. But Selma from Little Big Knits podcast has an episode where she talks more about it, and I'll link that below so you can get even more info. But basically the KAL started September 1st and it's going through the end of January, I believe. It's just a very casual knit along that we wanted to do together, and anybody is welcome to join in with us. All we're gonna do is just knit something, anything with unspun yarn. You can hold it with other yarn. It can be a small project, it can be a big project. It's very casual. So I have never bought unspun yarn before. I'm a very itchy person, so I was a little bit concerned. I have bought the Let Lopey yarn before, and I literally could not knit with it. So I was a little bit concerned about using Plotalopi, which is the plaits of unspun yarn from them as well. But I've heard so many good things about the Newton yarn. And my friend Amiga from Skeins of Dreams offered to let me buy a colorway of her Newton yarn that she was not going to use. And then I've also got some from Selma, which is coming. So I'm very excited about that. So this yarn is unspun. So that means that it hasn't been spun into a twist or plied or anything like that. Instead, it comes in what is called a plait of yarn. And these are about 500 yards, I believe. And look at this depth of color. I love it. And this Newton is a lot softer than the Plotalopi, but some people have absolutely no issue at all with the Plotalopi. Apparently I'm just a baby when it comes to itch. I was so pleasantly surprised with how nice this feels. I mean, I've got no problem with it at all. It definitely does feel a bit woolly, but it doesn't bother me. I don't foresee myself having any problem with it at all. Because of it being unspun, it has a lot of air that's going to be trapped inside of it. That air will heat up when next to your body, and it's going to hold that heat, and it is going to be warm. It's going to be hot. And I live in Arkansas, and today is 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is burning up. It's burning up. So I decided that what I'm going to do is hold this double, and I'm going to knit a vest. I think Selma's the one that came up with the name. I may be wrong on that, but I think Selma's the one who came up with the name. And it's called the Unspun Heroes Knit Along. Get it? So yes, if you guys would like to join in the knit along, then all you need to do is get some unspun yarn. And if you just want to try it out, it can be a small project. It can be a hat, it can be a cowl, it can be anything you want it to be. I'm gonna do a vest, and I picked out my pattern, and I will talk all about that on my next episode. I will show you what I'm gonna make. I do know that Honor Rocher, if I say that correctly, is having an update very soon, within the next week, I think. So if you're interested in trying the Newton yarn, then I would definitely recommend following them on Instagram, because they give a lot of details about updates there. So yeah, I'm a little bit overwhelmed with knit alongs at the moment, but I have been tossed around in my head the fact that I would love to knit a sweatshirt this fall. I got a lot of nice fancy sweaters and I love making those, and I've got some on my list to make for this fall and winter. But I also want to make a super cozy, throw it on, wear it all day sweatshirt. And so I've got a few different patterns and yarns picked out. I did get some yarn from Wobble Gobble that I want to make an outline raglan with. And I've got a few different patterns that I really love that I think would be a fun sweatshirt type pattern that I need to decide on. But since you're knitting them yourself, you get to pick out really fun yarn, and a lot of times the patterns will have something extra. It's not just a plain, normal, boring sweatshirt. It's a fancy sweatshirt. It's bougie. I don't know, I've kind of been tossing around doing a casual knit along that's like the bougie sweatshirt knit along. I don't know, does that sound stupid? Basically, everybody would just knit a sweater that they would consider to be a sweatshirt. Could be anything you wanted. It would be something that you want to have to be cozy and comfy and throw on and be a real staple in your comfort wardrobe. So I'm not sure if or when that will come to fruition. It may depend on if there's any interest in it or not. I will be knitting mine no matter what. But if anybody thinks that they might want to join in, then let me know in the comments. Maybe we can figure out some knit along plans. There would be prizes, of course. So yeah, that's an option. But yes, that is my current knit along queue. I'm a joiner apparently. So I currently have a big old hunk of meat in the oven. It is a prime rib and it smells so good I can't concentrate on anything else. A foolproof way to cook a big hunk of prime rib is to heat your oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit and rub your meat with olive oil. I like to do sea salt, garlic, pepper, all of that stuff. Rub it down and then put it on a rack if you've got one. I don't have a rack at the moment, so I stuck mine in a Dutch oven without the lid on it, and you will cook it for 5 minutes for every pound. This is 7 pounds, so 7 times 5, 35 minutes. So you cook it for 35 minutes at 500, and then once your time is up, you do not open the oven door. You just turn the oven off and then you let it set in there for 2 hours. And you do not open the oven door. Don't open the door. And then you should have a perfect prime rib. So I'm excited, it smells so good. I'm gonna make some rosemary potatoes and maybe some caramelized onions and mushrooms. All right, folks, I will talk to y'all soon. Don't forget that if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, like, or comment. Those things help my channel out so very much and help me to continue producing video content. And I also want to say, every single one of you that comment on my videos, I read every comment. Sometimes I can get behind in replying to comments, but I read everyone and I appreciate everyone, and I do try to eventually respond to all of them. I hope you're having fall-like temperatures wherever you're at and you enjoy this first week of fall, and I will talk to y'all soon. Happy knitting.
There's a lot of colors, I don't know where to go. See a lot of colors, only feeling blue. There's a lot of colors, lost within a haze. Don't rely on others to get you through the maze. The dreams are not the same for me. Standing by the shore while you're on the open sea, cannot take this anymore. There are a lot of voices drowning in the sea. There's too many voices talking back at me. There are a lot of choices waiting to be made. Too many choices, making me afraid.